The email arrived like a phantom, cloaked in anonymity and laced with unease. It was as if the very essence of secrecy had materialized in digital form, a ghostly whisper that sent shivers down the spine. It landed on Detective Sarah Langston's desk, a digital whisper cutting through the clamor of routine. The humdrum of the police station, with its ringing phones and murmured conversations, seemed to fade into the background as she opened the email. The subject line, stark and chilling, read, "Zephyr Capital, where money goes to disappear." It was a statement that carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths, each word a potential key to unraveling a grand deception. Langston, a woman hardened by years of chasing shadows in the labyrinthine alleys of Marlowe's underbelly, felt a familiar tug of curiosity. Her instincts, honed by countless hours of investigation, told her this was no ordinary message. This was no ordinary crank. This had the ring of truth, a desperate plea veiled in digital code. The kind of plea that spoke of hidden dangers and untold secrets, waiting to be uncovered. The message was brief, a cryptic roadmap to a potential abyss. It was a puzzle, each piece a fragment of a larger, more sinister picture. It hinted at a sophisticated scheme, a web of financial deceit spun within the opulent walls of Zephyr Capital Investments, the kind of scheme that could topple empires and ruin lives. The anonymous sender claimed to have insider knowledge, alleging that Zephyr, a firm celebrated as a pillar of Marlowe's financial district, was a mirage, a front for something far more sinister. The kind of knowledge that could only come from someone deep within the belly of the beast. Langston, her gaze lingering on the cryptic message, felt a surge of adrenaline course through her veins. This was the kind of case that could define a career, the kind of challenge she had been waiting for. She had spent years honing her instincts, learning to separate the wheat from the chaff in the murky world of white-collar crime. Each case had been a lesson, each criminal a teacher in the art of deception. This, she sensed, was no wild goose chase. This was different. This was a chance to peel back the layers of a carefully constructed facade and reveal the rot beneath. This was a chance to expose a darkness that may very well reach the pinnacle of Marlowe's elite, a darkness that thrived in the shadows of power and wealth. As Langston delved deeper into the email's cryptic contents, a sense of foreboding settled upon her. The deeper she went, the more she realized the magnitude of what she was up against. The name that surfaced with alarming regularity was that of Victor Carlyle, Zephyr's enigmatic CEO, a man whose reputation was as polished as his public persona, a man known for his Midas touch and shrouded in an aura of untouchable authority. Carlyle was a formidable adversary. His influence was vast, his reach seemingly endless. Langston knew that taking down a figure of Carlyle's stature would be a Herculean task, a perilous tightrope walk between ambition and ruin. It would require every ounce of her skill, every bit of her resolve. But the whispers in that anonymous email had ignited a fire in her gut, a relentless pursuit of justice that refused to be ignored. It was a call to action, a challenge she could not turn away from. The game was afoot, and Langston was ready to play. Langston, a woman of action rather than speculation, wasted no time in setting the wheels of justice in motion. She was known for her relentless pursuit of truth, never one to shy away from a challenge, no matter how daunting it seemed. The anonymous tip was just that, a tip. A small, seemingly insignificant piece of information that could either lead to a dead end or unravel a web of deceit. It was a starting point, a faint breadcrumb trail leading into a forest of financial complexities. Langston knew that every great investigation began with a single clue, no matter how obscure. Her first move was to call upon the expertise of the department's resident bloodhound, when it came to financial malfeasance, Detective Ben Jackson. Jackson had a reputation for his uncanny ability to sniff out financial fraud, a skill honed over years of meticulous work. Jackson, a man who could smell a cooked book from a mile away, shared Langston's initial skepticism, but a quick glance at the email's contents was enough to pique his interest. He knew that where there was smoke, there was often fire. What started as a cursory review of Zephyr's public records swiftly morphed into a full-blown investigation. The deeper they dug, the more anomalies they uncovered, each one more perplexing than the last. As they delved deeper into the company's labyrinthine financial statements, a pattern began to emerge, faint at first, like a predator's tracks in the snow. The numbers told a story, one of deception and greed. Transactions veiled in layers of corporate jargon, money shuffled between shell companies and tax havens, and a series of philanthropic donations that seemed a tad too generous to be entirely altruistic. Each discovery added another piece to the puzzle. The scent of deception was growing stronger. Langston and Jackson could feel it in their bones, the thrill of the hunt driving them forward. Langston, sensing they were onto something substantial, decided to pay Zephyr Capital an unannounced visit. She knew that catching them off guard was crucial to uncovering the truth. Stepping into the opulent lobby, Langston felt a palpable shift in atmosphere. The grandeur of the surroundings was a stark contrast to the murky dealings they were investigating. The air buzzed with an undercurrent of tension, the smiles of the impeccably dressed employees seeming a touch too rehearsed. It was as if they were all part of a well-rehearsed play, each one hiding their true emotions behind a mask of professionalism. Langston, a seasoned predator in this concrete jungle, could sense the fear lurking beneath the veneer of composure. She knew that the real challenge was just beginning, and she was ready to face it head-on. As Langston and Jackson navigated the intricate labyrinth of Zephyr Capital's financial records, they were met with a maze of numbers and transactions that seemed almost impenetrable at first glance. The deeper they delved, the more convoluted the trail became, each document revealing a new layer of complexity. Amidst this tangled web, a name began to surface with alarming frequency: Ethan Meyer. It was as if his name was a recurring motif in a symphony of deceit, appearing in places it had no business being. Meyer, a junior accountant at Zephyr, was an anomaly in the company's ecosystem. He was young, relatively inexperienced, and seemed to lack the cunning one would expect from someone involved in such high-stakes financial maneuvering. A quiet, unassuming man, he was an unlikely player in a high-stakes game of financial fraud. His demeanor was that of someone who preferred to stay in the background, unnoticed and unremarkable. Yet, the evidence pointed towards his involvement, albeit reluctantly. It was as if he had been dragged into this murky world against his will, a pawn in a game he didn't fully understand. Langston, a firm believer in following the money, suspected that Meyer was nothing more than a pawn, a cog in a much larger machine. He believed that Meyer's role was orchestrated by someone with far more power and influence. His access to Zephyr's internal systems, coupled with his apparent naivete, made him the perfect target for manipulation. It was clear that someone had taken advantage of his position and his trust. Langston decided to pay Meyer a visit, hoping to unravel the truth behind his unwitting entanglement in Zephyr's murky dealings. He needed to understand how deep Meyer's involvement went, and who was pulling the strings. Langston found Meyer at his desk, his face pallid, his eyes betraying a deep-seated fear. It was the look of a man who knew he was in over his head, caught in a situation he couldn't control. It was clear that he was a man caught in a current far stronger than he could handle. The weight of his predicament was evident in every line of his face, every nervous glance, as Langston, with a deft mix of empathy and unwavering determination, chipped away at his defenses. The truth began to spill forth. Meyer's story was one of fear, manipulation, and a desperate attempt to do the right thing in a world that rewarded deceit. Meyer, it turned out, had stumbled upon irregularities in Zephyr's accounting practices, a discovery that filled him with a mixture of trepidation and a misplaced sense of loyalty to the company. He had hoped to correct the mistakes, to bring them to light, but found himself ensnared instead. He had confided in a senior colleague, unaware that he was walking into a carefully laid trap. This colleague, whom he had trusted, had other plans. This colleague, a close confidant of Victor Carlyle, had manipulated Meyer into covering up these discrepancies, assuring him that it was all part of a complex but legal tax optimization strategy. Meyer, eager to believe in the integrity of his company, had followed along. Meyer, blinded by a combination of fear and misplaced trust, had played his part, unaware that he was signing his soul away to the devil. Each signature, each document he processed, pulled him deeper into a web of deceit from which there seemed no escape. Langston and Jackson knew that Meyer was just the beginning. The threads they had begun to unravel hinted at a much larger conspiracy, one that reached the highest echelons of Zephyr Capital. Their investigation was far from over, and the stakes were higher than ever. With renewed determination, they prepared to dive even deeper into the murky waters of corporate corruption, knowing that the truth, once uncovered, would shake the very foundations of Zephyr Capital. Armed with Meyer's confession and a treasure trove of incriminating data, Langston and her team began to piece together the intricate puzzle that was Zephyr Capital. The deeper they delved, the more apparent it became that Zephyr was nothing more than an elaborate facade, a meticulously crafted illusion designed to conceal a sophisticated money laundering operation. Millions of dollars were being siphoned off from unsuspecting investors, funneled through a complex network of offshore accounts, and used to finance everything from illicit arms deals to drug trafficking. The sheer scale of the operation was staggering. Zephyr, under the guise of its legitimate investment activities, had become a financial black hole, swallowing the life savings of countless individuals and leaving a trail of shattered dreams in its wake. At the heart of this web of deceit stood Victor Carlyle, the puppet master pulling the strings. Langston, driven by a potent cocktail of fury and a relentless pursuit of justice, vowed to dismantle Carlyle's empire brick by fraudulent brick. The investigation took Langston and her team across continents, from the luxurious penthouses of Monaco to the shadowy back alleys of Hong Kong. They followed the money as it flowed from one shell corporation to another, peeling back layers of deceit and uncovering a complex network of complicity that extended far beyond Marlowe's city limits.